Ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, this is gonna be a fun one. I'm Henry. That's Austin. That's Al.
Ooh.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're gonna put a
Yeah,
little
man.
lipstick on. We're gonna put a face on. We're gonna
Yeah.
do a little
Mhm.
dancey dance. We're gonna get our meat hooks, and we're gonna have a blast.
And we're gonna make some chili. Let's make some chili. Win a couple of competitions. Make a little barbecue. Oh
You don't have
man,
to
the
do
best
that.
in
You
the
don't have
best
to
in
do
the
that one.
state.
How you feeling today,
Yeah,
buddy?
man. Oh, good, man. We're finally talking another horror franchise, man. I'm always excited when we get to talk a horror franchise. You know that's up my alley, man. I love it. But yeah, no, this is gonna be a fun one, man. Because even the bad movies in this one that I don't necessarily love, I could still watch. I like this franchise, man. I'll just
Yeah,
say that off the bat. You know, I mean, there's movies I like way more than others, but I like this franchise, man. I dig it. And if you think about it, I kind of consider it one of the longest running franchises out there as far as horror goes because it predates Halloween and it's had a installment in every decade leading up to the current decade. It's 6 decades
yeah,
of horror with Texas Chainsaw. So only Halloween has that distinction as well. So
pretty
that's really
impressive.
something when you think about it. Yeah, it's pretty impressive when you think about it.
Yeah, this is one of the franchises that actually I saw the remake like 10 years ago randomly. I was at a friend's house and I
Mhm.
just happened to randomly just see the remake, and I was like, I like this movie. And I don't remember, definitely wasn't a horror guy at the time, but I was like, I like this movie. I don't, something's weird, like why do I like this? And then once I got into the film community, I finally watched the original. So those are the only two I
Mhm.
actually had seen going into this ranking. Well, technically I watched the prequel to the remake
The
like a
Netflix,
couple
well,
months ago.
and the Netflix one
Yeah,
when you did it for your episode, right?
yeah.
So you
So
guys'
like,
horror episode. So
yeah,
yeah, but
so
so you're still pretty much a newbie to the series,
yeah.
relatively speaking. So yeah, okay.
But with that said,
Uh,
going in, I was like, I dig this franchise as well. I'll spoil. There's only one movie that is negative in this entire list for me. You know, I don't have any 5 stars right now, but I do have a feeling that depending on as time goes by, I might have two that might jump that. So we'll definitely see how that goes. But have you been a fan of this franchise since day one?
you
Is it
know,
something that grow on you?
well, yeah. No, I've been a fan of this franchise for a while. We talk a lot, Henry. Of course, I talk a lot about my blockbuster heyday. From like
Yeah,
2001 to 2005. When I really started going every week and just watching movies. And I've said before that the first thing I did was walk right over the horror section and started blasting through all the horror movies. So that's was just the ones I connected to because they were the forbidden fruit, Henry. When I was younger. So when I was ready to watch them, I watched them. And I remember watching Texas Chainsaw, and I'd seen clips here and there. I was familiar with the thing. I never sat down and watched it, and I watched. I believe at the time it was the first four that were available because it was pre remake from
sure.
2003. I mean, so I watched the first four and had a lot of fun with them. And then I distinctly remember the trailers and going to see the 2003 remake and the hype around that movie for horror fans. It was a big one. I remember sitting in the theater when the trailer debuted with something else, and there were people around me, and it was a crowded showing going, oh yeah, like this because the trailer was cool. It had the old school like camera clicking, and all the stuff from like the
Yeah.
original movie, and it was pretty cool. They had the John Larroquette voiceover, and it looked great. And yeah, I remember seeing the remake opening night and having a blast. So and just having a good time. So yeah, I've been a fan of this franchise for a while. I mean, it definitely has its ups and downs. We'll talk about it. But yeah, like even the ones I'm somewhat negative on, I can still have some kind of fun with, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like even the ones I'm not totally all in on. But yeah, I'm definitely a fan of this franchise.
Absolutely. So might as well just go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
My very first one's gonna be short and sweet because it's the only one I've ever actually talked about. My number nine is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022.
Mm.
Um,
I'm not. I'm
so
not far off from you. I'm not
yeah,
far off.
so
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that this movie is trying to set up a world while
Hmm.
still being inside of a pre-existing world, and I feel like it just doesn't have its own identity because the new storyline that it's trying to tell is just not interesting. It's like these people trying to like save
Mm-hmm.
this town and all that stuff, and it's like you don't really care because you don't care about them. You know, it's like, so here's a good example of the new movie X that came out a couple months ago, the Ty West horror movie, where it's like it's these kids telling a horror a porn or trying to film a porn movie, and it's like, but like they have their own characteristics. So like even if you're not
Mm-hmm.
into the porn storyline, the characters have their own characteristics that stand out and are memorable as a film, and what this movie is missing. Like you don't really, you don't have that super like hoorah, like, oh, I want to follow you, like, and then you have the relationship between the siblings that, it's just, I don't know, it's just missing something. And then the only thing that I will give it credit is the bus scene is pretty cool. It's well shot, and me and John talked a bit about this on There'll Be Horror, where it's like, I feel like with Fede Alvarez being a producer on this was the one scene where he was like, "Hey, let me get in on
Let me
that one."
take
And I
over.
feel like, yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like that was the
Yeah.
one, because I was like, that's the only like memorable scene in that movie. Like I already forgot about most of this movie because it's just like I don't care. And don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
because I like this franchise as a whole, I probably will go back and watch it, even if it's like a hate watch to kind of like appreciate the other ones. I still will
Mhm.
go back and watch it. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of this movie. I was bummed out, and as you'll see later, this is my only negative one. So even the ones that are on paper bad, like if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes for this franchise, it's not good. So the fact that I am positive on the rest of them shows that like this one really just bummed me out. So yeah, that is
Mm.
my number 9.
Okay. It's my number 8, so I mean, I suppose
Okay,
I could talk about it as well right now.
yeah, go ahead.
So it's still in that bottom portion. Yeah, going into it, I didn't have high expectations, just because some of these later ones, more recent ones, have been hit or miss. But yeah, to me, it just felt like a worse version of 2018 Halloween. They're trying to do the Sally thing, where it's like, oh, we're going to bring back, this character, and claim that she's been, haunted by this or on the hunt, but like she's done really nothing to do that to like prepare or anything. She's just kind of hanging around.
Yeah,
Yet it's like haunting her when they actually pull the trigger on it. Literally, it's like we go an hour without even seeing her, without checking in. She checks into the movie, she checks out, and then she checks back in. Has an opportunity to completely blow his head off and just monologues, which is one of the dumbest things ever. Sorry, Laurie Strode would have popped the guy in the head immediately,
yep,
which is just dumb. And then just gets a chainsaw for a trouble. It's just a lot of that stuff is just completely wasted. Yeah, like you said, the characters are just. I didn't care. I didn't care about any one of them. I don't like the social influencer thing. It's just kind of lazy. But I will say, I would agree with you. The bus scene is a lot of fun just
yeah.
because it's shot really well. It's very bloody. It's very gory. There's some inventive stuff in it.
Good use of
Um, you
color.
know, uh, the stuff where the chick's like hanging out the window and he saws her in half and
Yeah,
her first half falls out. There's good stuff in there. And even the sequence where the girl is sitting in the van and he's kind of around the van, doing
yeah.
the kills or whatever in the field is
Got
like
some
pretty
decent
well done
tension.
and well
Yeah.
shot. Yeah, there's some decent stuff there. So it had its moments, but overall, yeah, I
But
feel like it was
those
kind of a
scenes, though, I
failure.
think those are inherent in the Texas Chainsaw identity and
Yeah.
like what the franchise is
Mhm.
automatic going to give you. Like I feel like the filmmakers didn't really have to do much there. They just had to pretty much put Leatherface in that scenario, and it's going to like
Yeah.
be enough because that's why we show up. We show up for chainsaw killings, well, except for maybe one movie,
Yeah. Right.
but but yeah. So it's one
Yeah.
of those. It's one of those ones where it's like, yeah, it's John had a good point where he's like, depending on the sequel, assuming it gets a sequel, depending on the sequel and where it goes, he might be more forgiving. But as of now, it's more on the negative, and that's how I am. It's
Yeah.
essentially how, obviously I'm more positive on Spiral, but it's how Spiral ends, where it's like, all right, they're
Mm.
shooting right now, they're setting up a sequel, and it's either going to diminish my opinion on this one, or it's actually going to skyrocket my opinion on this one, because right now I'm in the middle. Whereas in this one, I'm so low, but if it pays off, then maybe I'll be a little more lenient because I'll have
Well,
to
it's
watch
kind of
it.
like with Bond, how people reevaluated Spectre a little bit from where No
Yeah,
Time to Die kind of picked up the storylines, and you can kind
exactly.
of go and when it becomes kind of a bigger through
Yeah,
line,
sometimes you gotta
it
be
kind of helps
patient
it a
on the
bit.
franchise,
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. So yeah,
but
I'm fine with that. But
sometimes they
going
don't have
backwards,
literate plans, so it just
yeah,
depends on
yeah,
the
yeah.
structure of it. So, I have a
Um,
feeling I know what your number 9 is because of our
yeah,
chat, but, let's see
Right.
if you're familiar.
Yeah, number 9 is the 2017 Leatherface prequel. I just found this movie such a boring mess. I did not have a lot of enjoyment out of this one. And I'm pretty one who I'm a guy who's pretty easy to please when it comes to horror. Like if you got some decent stuff going on, I can forgive a relatively bad movie if you at least have some cool things. I just barely got any enjoyment out of this one, like at
This
all.
is my
I
number
thought
8,
it
so I'm on the
was.
same page. Similar, like how it is
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, this one, the only reason I flip flopped is because I at least got some stupid entertainment out of like the bus
Okay.
sequence and a couple of those things, like where it perked up and I was like, oh, okay, this is like at least a little fun for 10 minutes. But yeah, the Leatherface stuff I just didn't care. They try to do the bait and switch stuff, which is kind of
Yeah.
silly. Which I just thought was kind of pointless. It's an inferior version of Natural Born Killers with Mickey and Mallory, with the Isaac and Claire
Yeah.
character or whatever. It's just really badly done, to where it's like, am I supposed to feel bad for the Claire chick when the corrupt cop is like dragging her around by the hair and like beating her up, but like she just blew off a waitress's head point blank with a
Exactly.
shotgun? Am I supposed to have sympathy for this person?
Yeah.
Everybody in the movie other than the main nurse is like a piece of human garbage. It's just like a bad person. Like I just don't care. So I had nothing to like latch onto. Even the hostage stuff was just lazily done. I just thought that this movie just, again, there's a few points where it kind of picks up near the end where dude finally gets literally the leather face, holding his face together and kind of, has a couple of kills in at the end, but it's like way too little too late for me for like the last 10 minutes. And it
Yeah,
just,
it's like
it just didn't do a lot for
they
me.
tried to kind of do like a Hannibal Lecter mask with the thing where it's like where
Yeah.
it's like
Speaking of Hannibal, you know what this movie reminded me of? Did you ever see Hannibal Rising?
no, but I've heard things. Yeah.
It's as bland as Hannibal Rising. Like Hannibal Rising is like a super bland, forgettable. And again, aesthetically speaking, Hannibal Rising is like well shot and like well acted, but like it's just so dull and
Well,
like lifeless.
yeah,
I
and
just didn't feel anything in this movie.
yeah, exactly. And this is my number 8, and like similar to like what you're saying, it doesn't really look that great. Like it has like a weird dark like
Weird
tone to
digital.
it.
It's that weird digital photography that I don't
Yeah,
like very much, and I literally can't tell what's going on during some of those dark sequences. I
exactly.
could not. I
And
could not even see the movie.
and
Like
you
it's
don't
very
have any
strange.
likable characters. Even
Hmm.
like you said, the bait and switch with Leatherface. Like you have the Claire big kid who's like it
Hmm.
should be him. Like it's let's
Right.
just build that character up. Whether we're supposed to sympathize for him or he's supposed to be pure evil, whatever approach you're gonna go, at least commit to it. The bait and switch thing, like that kid that ended up being Leatherface, Jed. It's like, dude, he's like a small guy. Like, how does he grow up to what Leatherface becomes? Like, that makes really no
Yeah.
sense. Like, obviously, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's like, I don't know, it's just not as interesting. I feel like they were trying to be
Mhm.
smart, and it just didn't pay off. And the ending was cool. That's what ended up making it be positive for me. It's like I said, this
Mhm.
all of them positive for now. The ending, the last like 20 minutes, 15 maybe, where like when we actually do get the reveal, regardless of how dumb I thought the concept of it was, like from a writing perspective, the execution actually was good. So that's what like separated like that from like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Where it's like, even though I didn't like the writing, I still like the execution of it, like the chainsaw when you on the couch where you're going through them, like all that stuff. And it's like you understand, like even though, and once again, it makes no sense because Leatherface throughout the franchise is more of a mentally challenged character. Like
Yeah.
they establish
Yeah.
that in every movie, and this one he's not. Like he's a regular guy. He's
No.
unhinged and he's psycho, but he's not mentally challenged. So like it just, I don't know. It's really it's
But then they try to say that the Bud kid, the bulkier long hair guy, is kind of mentally challenged. So it's like,
exactly.
why wouldn't you just do that? Like I don't understand, because the whole thing is Leatherface is, and this is another reason why this movie's kind of unnecessary. I can gather through most of the movies that Leatherface is the way it is because he's mentally stunted, and all that stuff, and he just grew up in this family, so all he knows is like the cannibalistic psycho
Exactly.
family stuff, that
Yep.
they taught him everything he knows, and he never went to school, or like in my head he just never went to school or anything. He just grew up in the family, growing up in this weird environment with all these bones around and animals and slaughtering
Mm-hmm.
cattle or whatever, doing all this stuff. And then eventually, they told him, oh, go get that chick with the chainsaw, because he's just like the kitchen cook guy, he's the prep guy, for the family.
And
He doesn't
and
actively
like later
go out
later
and
in
kill
the
people, really.
franchise, there's plenty of movies where
Yeah.
he's like doing doing sympathetic things, or he's being
Hmm.
forgiving, or he's making his own choices in his own way. So it shows that he can
Hmm.
be a character. And it's like in this one, he's just like, nope, he's just an unhinged guy that we
Yeah.
randomly turn into Leatherface. And I'm glad what
Hmm.
you said earlier about the whole like Leatherface being the follower and the family aspect, because there's a movie that's
Hmm.
really high on my list that some people might not agree with my opinion on why I was accepting of all the stuff that happens in this movie, and we'll talk about that. But I'm
Hmm.
glad you mentioned it because it kind of teased on like my point there. So yeah, that's my number
Yeah.
8. Oh, I will say I did like the opening, like the actual the motive of the cop like putting him away in the mental hospital because obviously that's his daughter
Yeah,
and
I
all that
mean,
stuff.
some
I'm
of that
cool
stuff
with
was
that.
okay, and the lady was it Lily Taylor who played Verna was pretty good in the movie. Like
Yeah,
again, most of the acting is pretty. The guy who played Jackson, the guy who turns out to be is like pretty good in the movie. Like all the acting is okay. There's
yeah.
nothing aesthetically
It's
wrong other
really
than
just the
again
writing.
some of the dark photography. Yeah, it's just the story and the writing is just uninteresting to me. Like
Exactly.
I couldn't latch on to anything. So to me, the only reason I have that one at number 9 and the Netflix one at number 8 is because number 9 just I was a little more bored with it overall. Like at 8 at least had a couple of scenes here and there that would perk me up, and kind of catch my attention again. So that's the reason why it just gets the edge right there. So yeah,
There you go. Well,
that's it.
my number 7, since we both got our 9/8 out of the way, I'm curious to see
Hmm.
if this is where we stay on the
Start to
same,
split.
or if
Yeah,
we
right.
my number 7 is actually going to essentially be the same movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface.
Okay, I can understand that. I'm not far off from you. It's my number 6, so I'm not that
Okay.
far off from you.
So
Yeah.
now here's where I'll distinguish. Like I like this movie. There was a while where it was a couple spots higher. It ended up just going down because what I'm thinking about is I just have more fun or am more interested in
Mm,
the family dynamic for later ones or like other ones, like
mm,
higher up ones. Like that's really like it's how I do my distinguish in a lot of stuff. If I'm really gonna nitpick, like it's one of the ones where I really like the Viggo Morton stuff. That I really did actually fall for that one because I actually thought he was going to. I mean, it makes sense now that I've seen all the movies and the Hitchhiker thing. It's like a trend.
that
I
every
mean,
well, and that the thing is that everybody's in on it in all these movies.
exactly. You know what I
Everybody,
mean? But it was
like you
Viggo
can't trust
Mortensen,
anybody.
and I just
Yeah,
kind of believe him. He had that charm to him, so that was good. It
yeah.
was at least good acting and good writing that it made, even though from a franchise perspective, I should have known better, but I did
Hmm.
fall for it at least for a minute, and I was like, oh, I felt bad. The entire time I watched this movie, I was thinking about the Kurt Russell movie Breakdown, where
Breakdown.
like
No, and it's funny. I was listening to a podcast, one of my podcasts I listened to, and they did the retrospective a long time ago, and I was kind of re-listening to the retrospective, just while I'm on my walks and stuff like that, or at the gym. And they said the same thing. They're like, that opening gas station scene feels like Breakdown, feels like Kurt Russell. Somebody's gonna get kidnapped and gonna be like, where the hell did you take my girl? Whatever. Like,
yep.
yeah, it feels exactly like that because that one's also like in the middle of nowhere, Texas or Oklahoma, wherever it
Yeah.
is in
So
that
I
movie.
felt like
Yeah.
this one was more of a thriller than
Mm-hmm.
a horror movie, like especially within
Mm-hmm.
this franchise. But I was cool with that, like because I liked those vibes and I liked the story and the sympathetic characters, and it did a good job. Like it didn't do anything that like a week or two down the road that I'm really gonna remember aside from the breakdown comparison.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't offensively bad or anything like that. It didn't do anything that pissed me off, and it was a nice serviceable movie. Like I had no issues. Leatherface, he's always fun. You know what I mean? There's moments
Mm-hmm.
of doing his thing, and I dug it. And it's one of those ones like I said, you see this franchise like on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's just so like poorly reviewed, and it just like flabbergasted me.
Yeah.
Like I don't get it. Like these movies aren't offensive. Obviously, you have to pretty much be all
Yeah.
in with the concept of these movies, and if you are, it's doing what it's pretty consistent in a different. It has a different spin, like with style and tone and all stuff. But generally speaking, it is consistent in like what this family is. You know what I mean? And I'm all
Mm-hmm.
in. Texas Chainsaw is pretty
Yeah.
pretty cool. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 is my 7, and you said that was your
Okay.
6.
It was my 6, yeah. So I'm close. So I'll talk about it in a second. I'll just let me go ahead and get my 7 out of the way, and then I'll
Yeah.
come back to that one. So my 7 is Texas Chainsaw 3D from 2013.
Cool.
So this was a wild card for me when I was coming back to this because I had not seen it since the theater, since I saw it in 2013 in 3D. I do remember I saw this movie in 3D. So I do remember that, and all those spots where they're doing the obvious like saw like right in the the screen, and doing all that kind of stuff. I will say that it played better this time than it did when I originally saw it in 2013. So, because I was going back to this being like, this might end up being still like one of the bottoms or whatever. I will say the thing that stops this from being higher is just the lapses in logic for this movie are just so mountainous in this movie.
Okay.
The leaps in logic you have to take from pretending that Alexandra Daddario, while she's like 20 in the movie, it's an indeterminate age, indeterminate year. It's supposed to be like 40 years later, but she's 20 years old. None of that makes any sense, like at all. And to where they're even like covering up dates on gravestones to try to hide what year it is, but they're using iPhones, so it has to be like 40 years later. But yeah, that stuff doesn't make any sense to me. The leaps in character that especially she has to take, where she's apparently at the end of this movie all in on taking care of this psycho killer who still has her friends in the basement carved up, and now is just gonna live in that house with the same guy who just did all that, is to me just so stupid. But the movie, when it really revs up, to use a chainsaw, term, about 40 minutes into the movie, it's pretty entertaining. Like it does move, like it moves very quickly as soon as the chasing and the killing starts, and I found myself having a good time with it, at least just as far as turning my brain off and just having fun with the kills, with the chases, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the only, but so I ended up having a decent time with it. But yeah, this movie just has so much stupidity with the actual story of it. And to where if they had just said she was the, um, granddaughter of that lady instead of the daughter, you'd fix like 90% of the problems of this movie. And to me, it's just such a leap that I can't roll with it. So, but the movie itself was, again, fairly well shot. Most of the actors in the movie are pretty good. Even Trey Songz is like okay, but they also missed a huge red thing with him where he's boxing the bag and doing like kickboxing or MMA type stuff. How do you not have a scene where he's fighting Leatherface with MMA moves? I don't know. Like, how do you set that up and then not do anything with it? And then he just dies at a car crash. Like, that's a huge missed opportunity that you think would come around. That I guess the writers just the five writers of this movie didn't roll with that. Yeah, just stuff like that they should have been easy payoffs and just didn't do it either. So it's just kind of a paint by numbers movie, but has some entertaining spots. So it's my number 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mhm.
I'll let you say your piece on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 now. Just go ahead and
Okay,
say
yeah.
it.
So yeah, and again, my number 6 and I will say probably my number 5 are in kind of 3-star territory. Like they're pretty good. So like yeah, Texas Chainsaw 3 is it definitely has some problems with a little bit of pacing in the middle to where we don't even see Leatherface for a while in this movie, like a good almost 45 minutes. Like it's almost too long. Like we kind of need something in the beginning with him, at least for a sequel. Again, when we go talk about the original, he doesn't show up for a while, but it's because it's like the first time. But if you're doing a sequel where it's called Leatherface, we should see Leatherface just a little bit more. But yeah, I do agree that Vigo's really good in this movie. It's definitely like sort of a star-making standout performance. I
Yeah.
mean, he's Viggo Mortensen in this movie. He's a good actor in this movie, and you can tell he's going to go on to do good things. And Ken Foree, who's a horror veteran from the original Dawn of the Dead, and he's in The Devil's Rejects, Rob Zombie's Halloween, any number of movies. He has a lot of charisma as the survivalist guy, as Benny, and he definitely perks the movie up, and it's fun to see a guy in these movies that can fight back, and that can kind of go toe to toe with Leatherface. Like
Yeah.
that's at least an interesting dynamic in this movie that some of the other ones kind of lack with the leading ladies and things. So that's at least fun. I will say the main couple is kind of bland, which kind of holds it down, and they have this weird storyline of like they're traveling across the country together, but they're broken up, which is like that's just you're just asking for disaster to be in like the same car as somebody for 30 hours that you don't even like in the
Yeah.
first place. Like that's a leap, and I don't know why you would do that, but okay. And I don't even like know their names. I think the family members other than Vigo are fairly bland in this one.
Yeah.
They have like the
He's the
lady in the
standout for
wheelchair
sure.
with the voice thing is like okay, but all the other ones are kind of interchangeable. And yeah, but I will say that Ken Foree and Viggo Mortensen definitely elevate this movie to at least being somewhat memorable, amongst the sequels. So that's why this one's at least in kind of 3-star territory for me. It's watchable.
There
But
you
yeah.
go. All right, so my number 6 is going to be the first prequel, Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
and I guess the difference that I have with this is just because I really don't care about like the main group. Like I really
Mm.
enjoy the backstory of the family and how Arlie Ermy became the sheriff, and how the family
Mm.
kind of implemented themselves within the community, and they kind of just took over. Like I was all for that, but like I didn't really care about you know the people. So like I don't know, it's one of those where it's like it had the prequel stuff to it, where it's like I did enjoy the prequel elements, like in
Mm-hmm.
terms of storyline, but in terms of standing out from like the first one, it's one of those things where it was either repetitive or not as interesting. So it's like if I close my eyes and think about it, I'm like, all right, I still have the family stuff in the quote unquote original,
Mm-hmm.
and the main group is better. So it kind of like really like messes that up. So it's one of those things like I feel like for every two watches I would have of '03, I would have one of the beginning, because it's like, oh yeah, let me
Right.
just remind myself of the stuff that they taught me, because it's like unnecessary, but I'm cool with it because I really enjoy the family, which is a psycho to
Mm-hmm.
say because they're crazy, but it's like once you get some
No,
of
no.
those.
Again, you'll find a theme with my higher ones is I enjoy a lot of what the family is doing in those movies. So because it's entertaining in that horror like enjoyment of like
Yeah,
it's
it
just
makes you feel
entertaining what
gross.
they're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's so gross and dirty, and yeah, it's one of those where it's like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with everything they did. It's like one
Mhm.
step down from at this point everything else, because it's
Mhm.
just not as entertaining as
Yeah,
literally all my other five at that point. So it's like I don't really have anything negative to say. It just doesn't stand above. So at this
yeah.
point, I have one more 3-star, and then I'm going to get into my 4 stars. So at this point, we're really getting into the
Right.
stuff that I picked. But
Well, we're pretty much almost on the same roll, other than a few little minor things, because my
yep.
number five is Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning. So we're
Okay.
really almost in line, and it's also still 3-star territory. So
There we
we're
go.
kind of still, other than our nitpicky little one rank or another here and there, we're
Yep.
pretty much on the same page so far. So yeah, TCM the beginning, yeah, and it's one of those things where I think as much as Jordana Brewster is the most recognizable person in this movie, she's also the blandest, one you least care about in this movie, which is oddly enough. I actually thought the brother dynamic between the two brothers was okay. Like I
Yeah.
actually thought that was decent. The dean and the other guy, and like the scene where Arlie Ermey's like making him do like push-ups while he's beating him into the ground, the other dude's like cheering him on, was actually a decent scene. Like I got kind of invested in it. I thought it was pretty good. And yeah, I mean this it definitely helps that they brought Arlie Ermey back. He's the glue that holds those two movies together. Those two rebooted movies together. Like he is so good in both those movies that I'm convinced you could just have the fact that they basically made the movie a prequel more about him and the supporting family rather than like Leatherface. I
Yeah.
thought wasn't necessarily a bad idea, because Leatherface is still kind of Leatherface in this movie.
Yeah.
He's kind of the same, just doing the same stuff he always does. He's just doing what everybody tells him to do. Especially Arlie, get up here, Thomas, where are you at? Get up here, boy, get the shawl, da da
Yeah.
da.
From him.
Like he's doing the whole stuff. Like that's all he's doing essentially in the movie. But it's still got some fun stuff. I think the little bit of stuff with the biker gang thing is okay, with the guy kind of going on a little revenge tour, at
Yeah.
the house, and like it's still kind of fun. I love the stuff at the beginning where you find out he's not actually the sheriff, and they
Yep.
kind of took over the town. Like I thought that was
Creepy
pretty
as hell.
cool. A nice callback. Yeah, and the fact that they were just like, he's like, I'm just gonna put on this uniform and just be the sheriff now, well, the town's dead anyway, so there is no
Yeah.
police department. There's no slaughterhouse, there's no nothing. And the fact
Yep.
that they explained they're just doing the killing to feed themselves, just to survive. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're doing something horrible,
Really
but they're
leaning
just
into
like
the cannibalism. Yeah.
they're just doing it to eat. They're like, this is how we're gonna eat. We're gonna start taking out hitchhikers or road trip people or whatever. So there's interesting stuff in there, but yeah, there's just other movies in the series that are just take it to that next level, than the
Yeah.
beginning. So, but I will say I hadn't gone back to it in a long time, and I had a good watch with it. I'll say when I rewatched it. So yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. It's one of those where, like I said, I'm gonna add it into the rotation, just not as many
Mm,
times as I feel like these other
right.
ones. So, this one, I have a feeling this was my one where I was like, if I had to go in with a prediction, this is one of the ones I just have a feeling is going to be high for you. And my number 5 is Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation.
Mm. We're still not that far off, but I love
Okay.
this movie.
Yeah. So let's just get it out of the way. Matthew McConaughey is fucking
It's
awesome.
fucking awesome in this movie. He's so fucking awesome in this movie. He's so
Holy
goddamn good
cow,
in this
dude.
movie. He's
Jesus.
he's 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 all in. And if you go online, I'll just say this: he's not ashamed of this movie. You know, like there's some A-list actors sometimes that are ashamed of their horror, past or whatever. You know, they don't talk about it. You know, Jennifer Aniston, you don't see her going around talking about Leprechaun. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
or you don't see George Clooney going around talking about Grizzly. But like, there's interviews, quickly things where he'll talk about getting casted in this movie that he was like, it was almost by accident. Like he was like driving another guy to an interview, and then like they were happened to be casting this movie, and they said, why don't you just come in and try out? And he knocked it out of the park, and he got the role because this was like, around, this was actually filmed before Dazed and Confused. For anybody who didn't know, so this was he filmed this before Dazed and Confused, and it came out. It sat on the shelf for a little while. It came out after Dazed and Confused. But yeah, like, and the fact that he does the all right, all right, all right, in this movie as well, is fun. But he's got so many great lines. He's hamming it up, but like in a way where he knows what movie he's in, and he is just going
Him
all
having that
out.
Texas draw just adds to it. Like this is
Yeah.
the
Oh
one
yeah.
movie where it's like it doesn't feel like Matthew McConaughey. It feels like this character because that's how this character would talk. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
his mechanical leg, all that stuff is fucking just bonkers. Like I'm just having a blast with that.
Yeah.
The fact, the one lady who's in her suit, like she's the face of the family, and she's like, I
Yeah.
want to go get pizzas. Tell them to go get pizzas, and then you got the rivalry between the two. And it's fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
You have Renee Zellweger just doing her thing. I really like the prom subplot story of like they're just going to
Okay.
prom and they just get detoured and it's like it's fun. You know what I mean? Like I just enjoyed this movie. Like obviously the filmmaking perspective is not as great as like some of the other ones, but like the character stuff is just so much fun that
But no,
I
this
can find
movie is
myself watching
just
it.
batshit crazy, which is why I love
Exactly.
it. Which is why it's in my. We did a guilty pleasure episode of tournament fights, and this one was in my list of guilty pleasures. Like I love like how bonkers this movie is, and just how crazy it is. And I could see like a critic walking into this movie and being like, "That movie's fucking terrible." Like I get it, but like I think you can watch this movie as a fan of crazy bonkers horror, which I am. I think this movie is all in. It's my number 4, by the way, so I'm not far off from you, but it's my number 4, and I dig this movie so much. Yeah, McConaughey just is so goddamn fun. First, I'm gonna kill you. Ain't no fucking biggie, and he's just like, "Welcome to my world," and the shit where she's like got the rifle pointed at him, he just puts it in his mouth, and he's just he's just all in. Like
Because he
he's
just
just
knows
his
that it's
performance is
not gonna work.
so.
Yeah.
No, yeah, he knows he's in control and like he doesn't care. And yeah, like Leatherface is almost just a complete, almost non-factor in this movie. So like if you're a fan of Leatherface, like this will probably not be one of your high ones because he's kind of a
So
side
I
note.
watched because after
But
after I watched this and I enjoyed it and I saw like everyone hates this movie. The big consistent criticism I got, it was like, oh, he's doing this cross dresser thing. I'm like, did you not
I don't
realize
care
like
about
that?
that. He's done it in
Yeah,
every movie. He does that in every
exactly.
movie.
Just because in
Yeah.
this one he's got the brightest lipstick, it's nothing different than who he's been. Just
Mm-hmm.
because in this one he's more feminine than otherwise, he takes it literally says throughout the entire franchise, he wears faces based on his personality and who he's trying to be. And in
Mm-hmm.
this one, that's just he's filling that void of like that housewife. You know what I mean? And that's just who he's
Mm-hmm.
being
Yeah.
in this movie, and it's all good because you have the one who's the business lady. You have McConaughey, who's the tow truck driver, and he's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
the junkyard man. Then you have the other guy who's just the crazy psycho. Like the other guy is fucking nuts.
Mm-hmm.
He's just in this competition for some reason, and like that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
'Cause it's
Yeah.
like, Jesus Christ, chill. You guys are family or you guys are cousins. I can't
Yeah.
remember like which one he is, but it's like, and I
Yeah.
like other than the one. So it took me like 5 minutes. The main guy who's like really fucking annoying. The main prom guy. Like
Oh
he's
yeah, the
really
main
annoying.
guy in the tux the whole time. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
but you're like
probably the
supposed to hate
worst.
him, so
Yeah.
like like
Mm-hmm.
I knew that going in, but it took a minute to like, oh my god, let's get some comeuppance, and then eventually you get it, and it's like, all right, so then you got
Mm-hmm.
Renee Zellweger becoming the final girl, and like I enjoyed like this, you know what I mean, and I had a fun time, and I'm really happy that this is going to be added to the watch list. Like this is going to now we're at the point where
Yeah.
I'm like, let's start watching these. So yeah, Definitely has fun.
I do my impression a lot of Renee Zellweger in this movie in one specific scene. Would you like to hear it? It's my specialty.
Let's go.
He had a chainsaw. It was like he was running around with like a chainsaw. He had a chainsaw. That's my impression. Because
Like,
it's so weird when she busts into the legal real estate lady or whatever's office after she's been chased for like 5 minutes, and it's just such a weird acting decision where he's like, calm down, tell me what you. Well, he had like a chainsaw. Like, she's not terrified. She's like, it was just weird. He had like a chainsaw. Like, it was just a really weird line reading.
It's so shocking. It's like, who does that? You know what I mean? So it's like, I kind of get
it. It's just a funny scene in a vacuum. Yeah, no, in a vacuum, it's just a funny scene. So yeah, but this movie makes me laugh. It's kind of got a lot of comedic stuff going on. But again, some of these movies are bordering on comedies. There's one that's coming up that's basically a full-on comedy, and almost like a satire of the original movie. But yeah, like, so yeah, I like TCL. Like I said, it's my number 4. It's like a 4-star territory for me. I fucking love this movie. So yeah,
it could jump
I like
on the
it a lot.
4-star. I didn't know if it's one of the things where I'm like, it's so bad it's good that's why I had a good time, or if it's better it's underrated at this point. So I'm gonna wait until a future watchings just to make sure that the campiness actually still works for me, and it wasn't kind of a shocking like, oh, this is better.
This movie, I will say, it does have a cult following. There are people, who are like us who enjoy this movie, like for what it is. It's just like, because I kind of have a pulse on like the actual like broader horror community. So it still hasn't been fully embraced as like one of the good ones, but like it does have a following. Like Scream Factory put out a new Blu-ray of it. Like, it's got a following. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's there.
And it's interesting. The co-director of the original, Kem Hinkle, directed this one. It's one of those where it's like, all right, so it's like they know what they're going for in terms of like big picture. You know what I mean? So it's like that. You can tell that like this movie is made by a Texas Chainsaw Massacre person. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, you definitely feel that. But that was my number 5. What's your number 5?
I did my number 5 was the beginning, the Texas Chainsaw, the beginning, and then sorry, I kind of jumped ahead because I said the Next Gen was number 4. So yeah.
All right, then
so
I will go to my
to your number 4. Yeah, your number 4.
My number 4 is the original.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, so let me.
I see where I know what your number 1 is going to be now. I know full on what your number 1 is going to be.
So the reason that this one is number 4, and I'm just fucking 1, 2, and 3 for me are just fucking awesomely fun. Like this one, it's deliberate in its pacing, and I don't knock it for it. But if I'm going like it's 4-star, like now we're into the 4s, like, you know what I mean. This is one of the ones where it's like, all right, I like this movie. I borderline can say I love this movie. You know what I mean? But if I'm picking this and my 1, 2, 3, I'm probably gonna watch those 3 before I watch this one. Obviously, one of them's harder to access, but you know what I mean in terms of like in theory, and that's really all it is. Like, I love the creepiness of like in the van, picking up the hitchhiker, everything with the guy in the wheelchair, the hitchhiker cutting himself, and all that creepiness. And then when you actually get into the house, and it's like, hey, come save us. And then you're kind of like accidentally in, you know what I mean? It's the first one where it's like complete. I mean, I guess the remake too, but in this one where it really feels like an accident, you don't know what to expect. And like you hinted at earlier, like Leatherface, you don't even see him until like later. And then it kind of does that thing where it opens the door and it's like that reveal. And that's so cool. And it's like, I like the atmosphere of this movie, but it's just not as technically sound. So it's like, you have to really be in a mood to watch this one, whereas in the other 3 I can just throw them on and that puts me in the mood, whereas in this one I have to be in the mood. And that's really my only criticism. It's not even a criticism, it's just a distinction of my preference.
It's more of a taste thing, because I know where you're going. As far as I'm pretty sure I know what your number 1 is at this point. If you're putting the 4th one or putting this one at number 4, I kind of know where you're going. I'll talk about it later because obviously it's a little bit higher for me. But I know where you're going. But I can understand at least one aesthetic. What I can understand is that means you're going to put Texas Chainsaw 3D above the original, which is almost unforgivable for me on this ranking, where I think you're out of your goddamn mind. So I'm a little baffled by that. If you had this one at like number 3 and you had the other 2, wherever they were, I'd be okay with that. But I can't believe you're going to put Texas Chainsaw 3D above the original. That's that I gotta hear your reasoning for that because that movie's bafflingly stupid. So I gotta hear your reasoning for that.
But
All right.
until we get to that, what is your number 4?
Well, I talked about my number 4. My number 4 is Next Gen, Old McConaughey.
Oh yeah.
So,
All right. What's your number 3?
yeah.
Let's give you a
My
chance.
number 3. My number 3 is the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. So it's in my top 3s. Although I will say this, my top 3 are pretty much. My top 2 are definitely 5 stars. This remake is pretty close. Like it's like 4.5. It's like right on the border. I think 1 or 2 more watchings and I might be there. But it's very close. Because goddamn, do I like this movie a lot. And I just like how it looks. I like the atmosphere. Even the acting is really good. Arlie Ermy just fucking kills this movie. He's awesome when he finally comes in. I like the guy who plays Leatherface, Andrew Bernarski. He's a beast in this movie. Like he is a Hulk in this movie, man. He's a big dude, and he's got a presence about him that reminds me of Kane Hodder when he took over Jason in the later Friday movies. From the first time I saw this in the theater, I don't know if you know this or not, Harry, but they brought back the original cinematographer Daniel Pearl to shoot this movie. From the original film. So he came back and shot this one because they liked how much he shot the original one, and he came back, which is why this movie is gorgeous. Like if you can appreciate this movie just from a cinematography perspective, even if you're not a horror fan. You watch the first 30 minutes of this movie, and it is beautiful. So yeah, I think it's one of the most.
Too. That's what.
Yeah, 2003, and I think this is still, for my money, one of the best of the. I'll just call them, I guess, modern remakes, maybe post 2000 kind of modern horror remakes. I think this is still right up there near the top. Like this one's really good, and it gave me hope for Platinum Dunes. Going forward, I was like, well, they did a fucking great job on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Why wouldn't they do a good job on Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street? And those didn't turn out as well, but this one is just, I think everything just clicks with it. Just again, the setup is great. The pacing is excellent. I like the little twist that they make. The fact that the hitchhiker is not part of the family. She's just somebody who's so traumatized that she just is like, screw this. I'm not going to risk even going through any more of that. Boom, whatever. The fact that you don't know that Arlie Ermy at the time is not an actual cop, but he kind of plays it like it, and he's just so out of his mind in this movie that he's great. I even like all the really weird characters that just pop in and out of the movie. The fat trailer lady is like intriguing. I'm like, who is this lady? Lady's just the oh my lady. Like she's creepy in her own way, where she's not like deformed or she's just like, there's just something about her that's weird. And in the middle of nowhere. I think Jessica Biel does a good job, as the sort of final girl in this movie. So I think everything about this movie just clicks, and I really, really enjoy this one. So it's not to disparage it that it's at number 3. It's just the first 2 I just enjoy even more. So that's all it is. But yeah, I really like this remake. I think it's one of the best horror remakes, at least of the 21st century. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'll talk about that in a little bit.
I know you will, because I know where you have it. So yeah, that's fine.
My number 3 is, it's just a gut feeling, I guess, with why this is number 3. My number 3 is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. This one's a lot of fun. Like it's the one I'm pretty sure you're hinting at. It's a comedy. Like this is
no, I'm not hinting at. This is a comedy. This is 100% a Gremlins 2 situation where Tobe Hooper directed this from the first one, came in and made a comedy, and basically almost to the point of parodying the first movie. No, for sure, it's a comedy. Yeah,
everything with the cook, right? He's the one with the head plate.
Oh yeah. Oh no, Chop Top is Bill Moseley, and the cook is Drayton Sawyer. Yeah, the older cook guy.
You're right.
The dad. But Chop Top is great. Yeah.
Like he is wild, and like the majority of this movie takes place at the radio station. You know what I mean? You got Dennis Hopper doing his thing. When he's out there, when he buys the chainsaws, and he's like trying them out. He's just he's like, let's fucking
holding them up, feeling the weight. Yeah. He's feeling back and forth. He's like testing them out. Yeah, no, he's the man.
Dude, this movie is bonkers, but like in a good way. You know what I mean? Like this movie is just a lot of fun, and I this was a pleasant surprise because like I said, after the first one of just I've seen it a few times going in, like I think even after this Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974, right? That's the year. That's that
Yes.
one I've seen the most still to date, like, you know, out of all these movies in the franchise. So like going into 2, I didn't know what to expect, and because it's not available right now, it's on Pluto TV or Tubi, one of the two.
To be.
So
Yes.
yeah, it's free to watch right now. So if you guys are watching this and you guys have not seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a while, it's available on
It's hard
Tubi
to
right now.
see.
Yeah, so
Hard to see. So you got
take
to watch
advantage
it.
of that. Yeah, you have to watch ads, but it's in good HD. Like it looks good. You know what I mean? But everything like on the street, like the chase, you know, when he's, you know, chopping them up in the car, and dude, it's fucking wild. Like, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
so much fun. Yeah, this
Yeah.
movie is bonkers, and I just had a blast, dude. And like I said, my gut feeling of my initial reaction after my top 2 is the fact that is this one is just the pure comedy, and I guess that distinguishes it, so it doesn't have the horror elements to it. Like it
hmm
does and it, you know what I mean? It does and it doesn't. Obviously, it's horrific stuff, but it, like, you know, it's, you know,
hmm
like you said, satire, you know, however you want to phrase it. But it's like
mm
the distinguishing factor where it's like it doesn't have the horror element. So like I'm going in, I'm like, all right, let's have a little fun with this one versus the other one. It's like, all right, let's just be invested in this entire world and story. Whereas in this one's like, oh, let's just have fun. But I'm no complaints, and I'm excited for the day when I can finally watch it whenever I want with not ads and all that stuff. And once again, it's going to be
Yeah.
on rotation, and I had a blast with this. And this is the movie where, well, this one and my 2 apparently are the ones where I'm glad that we did this one, because like it forced me to watch it, and I'm pleasantly surprised. So I had a blast
Mm.
with this one, and I'm happy.
Yeah. 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 No, I like it. Well, I can talk about it because it's my number 2. Texas
Well,
Chainsaw 2 is my number 2.
ooh,
And yeah,
I wasn't sure.
yeah, this movie, fun fact about this movie, first time I saw it in my Blockbuster days, I hated it. I hated this movie with a passion.
Really?
And I hated this movie for about 10 years, for a long, long time. It took me a long time to turn the corner on this one because it's not a straight horror movie,
Yeah.
because it's so goofy, because it's so silly. But as I grew my appreciation of both horror comedy and stuff like House of a Thousand Corpses, oddly enough, which also features Bill Moseley as Otis, who's also Chop Top. And you could tell that when you watch House of a Thousand Corpses, Rob Zombie is a big fan of both the original and this sequel. He's a big fan of those movies, because there's a lot of similarities. It took me a long time to turn the corner, but there's a guy named Patrick Bromley on a podcast I listened to called F This Movie, and he had a nice quote recently that's really resonated with me. He said, "Never give up on a movie because you will change, but the movie won't." So the movie
That's
will
true.
always be there. The
Yeah,
movie will always be there, but you might change,
I
you
like
know?
that a
So
lot.
that's why even stuff that I still don't get, like Blade Runner or The Big Lebowski, about once a year, I still give them a chance. You know,
That's
because
fair.
I go, maybe this time it'll click, much like with Doctor Strangelove that we talked about last week. It finally kind of started to click, you
There
know,
you
and it's
go.
starting to get there to where if I revisit it a year from now, maybe it'll click even more. Maybe I'll enjoy it even more. So, you know, your taste can change. What you're looking for in a movie can change. So yeah, I hated this movie originally. But man, it was just something where when it finally clicked, and I appreciated it in sort of a Gremlins 2 way, where Gremlins 2 kind of almost makes fun of the original and pokes fun at how silly it is or the concepts and stuff, and
Yeah.
just goes full on where Toby Hooper, he got in
Once
trouble
they
with
get into
Canon
like,
Films, who
is it
was
a
producing this
basement or is
movie.
that a cave? What is that? Like how
It's a
does it?
carnival. It's underneath an amusement park, like
Okay.
an
Yeah.
old Texas amusement park that they're underneath. And that's yeah, it's one of the more fun things. Is like the set design of this movie is crazy. You know, like it's just fun to look at. They have all these crazy sets, and they're in this carnival atmosphere. And like the radio station stuff is fun. Did you jump at the jump scare at the radio station? Be honest. Did you jump at that?
I think I did. Like I think it
Yes.
got me good. Yeah.
It's one of the best jump scares, low key jump scares in horror history when the light kicks on and he comes out of the little room at the
Yeah.
radio station. It When I watched it with my ex several years ago and she didn't know it was coming, but I knew it was coming. I watched her and she literally jumped out of her seat about 6 inches. Like it's a great jump scare, great
I guess
jump scare.
the only
Um,
issue I had with that is it's a little bit cheap just because like he's not making a sound and then it's going, but like I don't care because it was so well executed
it's
and like
so good. It's so
yeah.
well executed that you don't care because you're like, holy shit. But yeah, like I had to embrace how silly kind of Leatherface in this movie doing his little dances and back and forths and you know kind of
Yeah, he
whatever. But yeah,
He's all in
it's
though.
so silly, but like he's all in. Bill Moseley playing Chop Top is all in. The guy who plays Drayton Sawyer, the dad, is a lot of fun. Just I love their dynamic where he's just always like with the brooms or whatever, just always like, get out there and get that grill going, damn it. What are you doing, you idiot? Get over there. Like his dynamic of just being the annoyed dad of how much because Chop Top's always carrying the old hitchhiker body around and being silly and like not focusing on the task at hand. God damn it, you idiot, get over there and get her. All that is fun. And I think Caroline Williams' stretch is really good. I think she's a really likable, protagonist. And like
Yeah.
you said, this was Dennis Hopper full on cocaine. He's cocaine fueled in this movie, and you can tell. And he's all in with his I'm bringing it all down, chopping the poles and stuff. He's having a blast. And come on, it's got a chainsaw fight, chainsaw versus chainsaw. Dennis Hopper and Leatherface going at it, and it's just so much fun. Yeah, I think this movie's a blast. I think it's super entertaining. So yeah, it's my number two. I've grown to really really like this movie.
Yeah, it's just I feel like obviously because it's just hard to access, it's gonna be one of the ones that's just gonna
Right.
remain underrated for a while. But
Yeah.
it shouldn't be like it's. I mean, obviously you have to go in with the right mindset. You know what I mean? It's like essentially like what you said with Doctor Strangelove. It's a comedy without really being in your face as a comedy. You kind of have to get why it's a comedy and how it parallels and separates itself from the original while still being a sequel, but also doing its own story. You know what I mean? Like it does it sets
Mm-hmm.
up its own world and what they're going. Like I said, it provides Leatherface with that sympathy when he like lies and like says he killed her. You know what I mean? And he didn't, but like you get it because he's not really a pure evil psychopath. He's not the Shape. You know what I mean? He has his
Mm-hmm.
own mind, even if it's faltered with being just not a smart
Mm-hmm.
man, but I know what love is. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those where you enjoy Leatherface as a character because of moments like that. His wacky, crazy kills
Mm-hmm.
are awesome, but also he's memorable because he stands out a little bit in that way. All right,
Yeah.
so let's get this over with. My
I gotta hear this. I gotta hear this because I know what's coming. Your number two is Texas Chainsaw 3D, isn't it? I gotta know.
I accidentally had number 2 on that one for but my number
Yeah. No, I know what's coming. You gotta sell me on this shit because I can't buy in this
movie
being
was
above the
awesome,
original
dude.
or
What are
even
you
number
talking
two.
about? This movie was
All
awesome. All right, so it starts
right,
off.
sell me.
All
I'm
right.
listening. Sell me.
All right, so
Sell
it
me.
starts off with the beginning of essentially being a direct sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you
The
have
opening
the
10 minutes is good.
yeah.
I'll give you that. The opening 10 minutes is good.
So
I
it
liked it.
opens up with that, and it really sets up like, hey, burn it down. Let
Mm-hmm.
this. By the way, my
Mm-hmm.
review on Letterboxd was literally "Evil dies tonight," which is the Halloween kills thing.
Oh, it's the same thing. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's more of in that one. They imply that the next town over, kind of knows what they've been doing and has been sort of putting up with it as long as you're not killing our own. Is
Yeah.
sort of thing is what I get from it. That you're killing the people that are passing through, but just not don't mess with us. And they started sort of you started messing with us, or or you took it too far, one step too far. You took it outside of your little boundary, and so now it's over. Yeah, no, I mean,
So,
yeah, the
so
opening's okay.
so you set up the storyline of Heather being a descendant, regardless of the timelines. Well, this honestly, until you mentioned it, I didn't even think about it, so it didn't bother me. So that is what it is. So that's maybe that'll bother me later on our next rewatch, but on initial
Oh
rewatch, I didn't even
well,
think about it. So anyway, take that out of it. But you show up that she's a descendant of the Sawyers, and it's Carson, right? That's the other family name, Carson and Sawyer, right?
yeah, the Carsons and the Sawyers. Yeah, well,
Right.
it's confusing because in certain timelines it's the Sawyer family, and in the remake, the '03 and the '06 movie, it's the Hewitts. They
Yeah.
changed it, so it's the
Honestly, I'm
Sawyers
I'm
or the
I'm just
Hewitts.
not worried about any of that stuff. Like, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like I did
yeah.
the time that I treat this timeline like X-Men. Let me enjoy the individual movies for what they are, and if some of
Yeah,
them
yeah.
connect, then I'm cool. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you start worrying about that, then the whole franchise is going to go down the drain. Like let's just enjoy the individual movies. So with that said, so you set up Heather as this character who she's kind of like in her own world. She's like, all right, I got my boyfriend, I got my friend. You can tell like she's just a young person like working at a supermarket, which I'm sure you can relate to, and you're like, oh shit, I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Let's go. So it's setting up that world, and then you're like, all right, we're gonna go on a trip for Halloween. and it's like, oh, I got this news of my grandma died, and it's like, oh, that's interesting because I thought my grandparents were dead. Oh, I found out I have other family bloodlines, and then the parents are like, hey, um, we essentially stole you, and it is just is what it is. That's just fuck it. That's what it is. Don't go back there. We did you a favor. We may not have been great, but it would have been worse there. So it sets up the fact that she had an upbringing that wasn't the best. Like obviously her parents were hillbilly-ish. Her parents were a part of that riots and a part of that burning, you know what I mean? So clearly her parents are not 100% on the up and up. She clearly after talking there's dialogue where she's like not a big fan of them. You know, I grew up I had to be with those people, you know what I mean? So clearly she's got a rough edge to her already with that, let alone what's in her bloodline. So that already like sets that up. But you have the relationship with the family. You have the hitchhiker, which I kind of love that fake out of the hitchhiker, and this one not related to them. He's just a scammer. You know what I mean? He's over here trying to like rob, and I liked that fake out. That's how you do a fake out. Unlike
Well, and
Leatherface.
they're stupid for letting the guy in hit the house by themselves and not leaving one of the friends behind. That's stupid.
Well, no, I'm
That's
okay
really
with it
dumb.
because you got to think about how long of a road trip is. You built that. He did a great job of fooling us. Like you either think he's going to be, part of the family, or he's going to be actually a legit guy. And it's kind of it. Like I said, in a road trip, you develop a bond long enough. Like they were, on the edge for the beginning, and then they developed a little bit of friendship. And he's like, oh, this one's on me. I owe you guys, blah blah blah. So I actually I'm cool with that. So then you keep going, and then he finally lets Leatherface go, and I love that the lawyer was like, "Hey, you need to read that letter," and it would have hinted at it. So it already hinted at like there's something going on, which obviously us as fans of the franchise and just knowing the franchise, we know that anyway. But it's plot line stuff like writing. So it goes into there, and I get what you're saying of like the whole friend stuff, and then she does like a complete turn, but where it works for me is she already had that hard edge to her, but it's one of those things. It happens in movies and also real life. And I've always defended. I don't have a good example right now, but I know I've had this conversation of a different movie where it's like when it's in the bloodline and it's who you are. The fact that they had that scene of her reading all those files for like as long as they did, and it kept like cutting back and like looking at her eyes and how she was starting to really like get festered up and really get angry, and it really was starting to grow, and it's like her roots were starting to show and blossom, and it's really the Sawyer was starting to come out in her, you know what I mean? So and then she did the whole murderer thing on there, and at the end of the day she is not being an outright murderer in terms of like the masses. It's just specifically this revenge thing. And I love that Leatherface, every time he murdered one of these cops, he was crossing out a face for someone who was part of that massacre and everything. And it's ironic that their family was massacred, even though they're usually the massacres. So I love that it's not a direct, like, we're a mass murdering serial killers, like what you kind of hinted at in the original. It's like now we're turning into a revenge. Like this is vengeance. This is specifically this town that fucked us over. So I don't think it's specifically alluding that she's going to become a Sawyer 100%, but the Sawyer that's in her is going to surface. And I love that it had the biggest ending where it's like, all right, you're in there and it's like, time to clean up, and you don't really know exactly where it's going to go. I would have actually loved to that there would have been a follow-up to this and see, like, is she full on now in the family, or does she do her own thing and she kind of rebels against it? Now it's kind of a Heather versus Leatherface, they're one-on-one. You know what I mean? I would have been cool with that. I liked all the characters. You have the dumb subplot of her boyfriend and her best friend hooking up behind the scenes, because that just happens, especially in horror movies. It's a good excuse for them to kind of be away for a little bit. I loved that. At first, I didn't know where they're going with it, because the one sexualized scene in it when she gets tied up by Scott Eastwood's character, and like all of a sudden her tits are out, and it's like, oh, now they're just, she's hot, let's just show her tits. But I loved how they're able to use it, and that's how, because her face is taped, and that's how Leatherface was able to see that she has that scar, which hinted at, it's like, oh shit, you're someone, and now and then he rips it off, and then she's like, I'm your cousin. And then it's like, now once again, that's what you talked about at the very beginning of Leatherface kind of just being part of the family stuff and doing what you're told. And it made a lot of sense that he's still on edge, like later when she like tries to touch his face and he like stops. She's like, don't fucking do that. Like, we're family, but you got to earn that. But some of the inherent stuff of him following her and like listening to her. And I love that the cop, when he hit the mayor back with the line, he's like, you don't mess with the Bible or whatever he says. He's like, it's essentially your comeuppance. Your excuse for killing that family initially was because of the Bible. All right, now you're killing is, it's karma. You know what I mean? It's payback. And I love how that came full circle. And I love how the sheriff, he was a good guy and he's a legit cop, but he still has his gray area. He's like, all right, well, I'm gonna let this go because A, first of all, I'm getting fucked up if I don't, and B, fuck them. Let's clean the town with all this evil. And it's essentially like he was in on it, not literally, but his end goal was being similar to Leatherface's of getting all those guys. So I enjoyed this movie. Everything with the carnival, him running through. This is like the first time like Leatherface is like in like society and not just in its own thing. So that's cool. This is the first time you've really ever seen that. And I had a blast with it. I really enjoyed this movie. It looked good. I thought all the acting was good. The kills were brutal when he cut off the chef's body and he's just hanging there and it's gross. And I don't mind the car crash thing because it's one of those where it's like sometimes that's just how it goes, dude. You don't have to have a full on thing. Like you're running away and you're not, and he sawed up the car. You know what I mean? Like I really enjoyed this movie and this was a pleasant surprise. This and 2 are the 2 that I was like, wow, I was not expecting this from either of those, and I had a blast because I've seen nothing but negatives about this, and I fucking loved it.
Great, I disagree because boy, does this movie go out of its way to try to have sympathy for the Sawyers, and I'm sorry if I don't have sympathy for a group of cannibalistic murderers that pull hitchhikers off the road and turn them into barbecue. And the fact that this movie absolutely tries to get you to have sympathy with them in the first scene. Absolutely, fucking tried to do that.
I don't think it's trying to have sympathy for them as a people. I think it's trying to have sympathy with the fact that 2 wrongs don't make a right. And I really think that's the overall message.
Right, but at the same time, if this is Texas justice, man, and if they found out that this was going on, and they go and decide that while the police are not going to do anything because they're only after Leatherface for some reason, not the entire family for being in on it. He's the worst cop ever. He's only going to arrest the one guy and apparently just let everybody go. They're like, fuck that. Like, we're just going to stop this outright. So I'm not necessarily rooting against them, although, yeah, I mean, it's Texas justice. You're either with it or you're kind of not, but like, I'm not against it. And the fact that later on when he finds out that this dude is still there and still doing that after he kills a cop, and the cop doesn't give a fuck apparently about his own cops getting butchered with a chainsaw and does nothing about it later on in the movie and just lets that slide. Okay. And let's just let the mayor get killed by this guy. Okay. I'm just going to let everything slide because, moral gray area. I just don't buy that shit like at all. Again, these leaps in logic of this movie and where she is, Heather is perfectly fine with all this while, she's standing literally at the top of that thing, taking the tray away. And it's like, oh, hey, what's on that tray? Is that my friends you just sawed in half that I just took this road trip with? My best friends? Like, oh, what's that smell? Oh, my best friends that you're chopping up and cutting their faces off in the thing? Bullshit. I cannot get over that. Bullshit. But the movie has entertaining parts.
It works for me. I'm gonna let you talk about your number one and tell me why.
the same faces you give me for some of my picks in the past, I'm giving you for that pick over the original. And even the sequel. I cannot. Okay. Anyways, but yeah, of course.
Go. Finally, I got under Pez's
skin. Yeah, you got under my skin with that one. Sorry, that movie's so stupid. But anyways, yeah, my number one is obviously the original 1974 Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This movie is fan-freaking-tastic. I think from literally the opening shots, which with what shoestring budget they had, much like the original Halloween, how gorgeous this movie looks and is shot, how well it's just photographed is incredible. I think it grips you from the opening stuff with the crazy hitchhiker to where it's like it just it wasn't unusual to pick up a hitchhiker back then, so they pick him up, and then when he starts getting weird, it's like you're just like a what the fuck type thing. If you're seeing it for the first time, you have no idea where this is going. They encounter this house, obviously back then looking for some kind of phone or something, and yeah, the fact that Leatherface is not even hinted at. And he just literally comes out of nowhere. You got the one guy looking for the friend. The way it's shot is just so so brilliant. Just kind of, he's kind of stumbling through this hallway. It's very silent. There's no score, like modern days where it's loud noises and just constant music. It's just silent. And then all of a sudden he trips. Leatherface is there. Holy shit, who is that guy? Boom, hammer shot, pull him in, slam the door. I think it's one of the most brilliant sequences ever
Yep.
filmed in a horror movie, start to finish. And then the sound design in this movie, for as little budget as they had, if you have not seen this in a theater, which I have seen this twice in a theater, the sound design of those chases in the second half of the movie, where she is being chased by Leatherface through the woods, the way they shoot the chainsaw, as far as like the sound getting under your skin and really being the horror of it, and using that to the fullest effect, I think is genius in this movie. And the fact that then it just gets even more wacky, more crazy when they kind of expand the world halfway through the movie, and you think she's safe, and we find out that no, the gas station guy is in on it too. Everybody's in on it in this damn movie, and they're all part of the family, and there's no escape, and the horror just continues. And it gets even more bonkers when they wheel out this grandpa who you think is just some corpse and he's dead, but he sucks some blood and now he's alive again and swinging the hammer and missing. Like, it just gets more and more bonkers as you go. You have no idea what's coming at you. I just think it's so brilliantly laid out, and the ending stuff, just the final little chase, up to the road, and the close call, and she goes away, and she's crying, but she then starts kind of laughing, of just like, oh my god, what the hell have I just experienced? I think from start to finish, this movie is a complete and utter roller coaster ride, and in the best possible way. I can't say enough good things about this movie. It's in my top 100. I love it to pieces. I think this movie's genius, and it just
I
gets
mean,
better and better every time I watch it.
yeah, it's one of those ones where I don't know. It just, like I said, I just have to be in the mood for it. I don't really have anything
Mm-hmm.
negative to say. It's just a mood based one, and
Mm-hmm.
if they have to hit me like to my core, like for example, like There Will Be Blood, where it's like I still have to be in the mood to watch that, but like it's like a me movie. Whereas this one's not quite a me movie, so I still enjoy it every time I watch it. I just don't rush out to see it. So like that really is what separates that for
Mm-hmm.
me. So I definitely have no issues with that being your number one, and I was
No,
either
and
I was
and
either
and when you said the number, this one was like number four, I go, okay. I bet you anything the 2003 remake is his number one, which obviously it is, right? So, and to me, I understand that aesthetic because it's a little slicker, it's a little meaner, it's a little, little bit faster paced. You have like somebody like Arlie Army, carrying it. I get that aesthetic. If you had this one number one and the original one at number two or three, I could roll with you. But the fact that you still, just to me, the Texas Chainsaw 3D thing above it just baffles me. just personally, just
yeah.
baffles me. I don't
I
understand
love
that.
that.
I don't
So
understand
I'm gonna
that.
read you my
Yeah.
review. This movie is
Okay.
wild, just as gritty and dirty as the original, but with better pacing and better acting. Honestly, can't take away what the original built, but this is a great remake. So essentially, it's like, hey, this is what I want from a remake. This is the
Mm-hmm.
original. Here's the remake. Like it does everything that it's like. This is like honestly the best version of a remake I can really. I mean, I'm sure.
No, it's a great remake. I mean,
Yeah,
I had it number three. Like, I love this movie. I think
yeah,
this movie's a
and
fucking.
and
I
I
think
and
it's
I
one of the
and
best remakes of the 21st century for sure.
exactly.
Yeah,
And it's
definitely.
like this is what a remake needs to be. Like there's enough difference.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough, like you said, changing the
Mm-hmm.
names and all
Just
that
enough
stuff.
tweaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just upgrading the filmmaking, the budget, the act, you know what I mean? Everything that you love about the original, it just amplifies it, or it ups it up, and the
Mm-hmm.
tension is still there. I just love like the drips of the water, the sweat, the ripping of the shirts. Um when the head gets blown off in the back of the car, and Arlie Ermey is just so fucked up. And it's like, dude, he's a cop. He's supposed to be helping us, and he's like against us, and just that fear, like that, like this, it's the horror in this movie is not even Leatherface to 100%. It's Arlie Ermey's character, because it's like it's a humanistic approach to like how fucking crazy people can be and how dark the
Mm-hmm.
world can be. And it's similar to like when people like try and argue that the Silence of the Lambs or Seven aren't horror films. Yes, they are. Same
Oh, of
things with
course they
this.
are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you take Leatherface out of this movie, it is still a horror movie, and that's what I love about it. Like
Mm-hmm.
this movie, like I said, obviously it's still fresh in like the current rewatch. Like it's only the
Mm-hmm.
second time I've seen it, but like I'm not this it could be top 250 material, you know what I mean? Like this could be in a
Mhm.
5-star like favorites. Like this could be like, hey, let me close my eyes. I want to watch a horror movie. Boom, Texas Chainsaw Massacre over 3. You know what I mean? Like that's
Mhm.
just how I feel about this. Whereas like I said, that's what separates that from like the original. It's like I'm not really going to do that. And it's like not really knock on the movie. It is what it is. It's like take like here's the best example I can give of like how I feel. Like take the score out of Halloween, and I'm not as likely to rewatch that movie as much. The score really sets the pacing and the tone for that, whereas this one doesn't have anything like that for me. So it just is missing something in terms of like putting it up on that pedestal. So I just
Mhm.
don't have the affinity that you have for it. But I like I said, I'm not knocking
Mhm.
you for it by any stretch of imagination. And you know, the fact that you hate me for Texas
I
Chainsaw
don't hate you. I just don't understand it. I still, even after your
honestly,
explanation,
I
I
might
still
watch
don't
it again
understand
before
it.
bed.
Yeah, well, it's on Netflix, so do your worst. But yeah, no, and one other point to why I like the '70s one so much is I've really gotten big on like '70s movies like the last 10 years
The
of my
aesthetic,
life. Like as I've kind of matured, so yeah, the '70s aesthetic, the gritty, '70s kind of guerrilla. It feels like
being
guerrilla
on film.
filmmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one feels like it just the feel of the movie. It feels like a snuff movie. Like you said, you feel like you want to take a shower after watching this movie. Like you feel like you watched something you shouldn't be watching. It
Yeah.
was like this forbidden movie. And I just like how raw it feels. Like, and it's not even really that. If you go back and watch it, and maybe I don't know if the first time you saw it, it's really not that bloody or like gory. Like it's all in the filmmaking of like cut. They kind of cuts around things in there. A lot of it's implied. When she gets put up on the hook, there's like a little cut right before she does, and then she's
Yeah.
just there. It's more about just the way it's kind of shot and the sound design and stuff. But yeah, I just like how raw this movie feels. Like it feels like it's like a above a student film, but it feels like somebody they just had this idea and just shot it, but like it was in good hands. So yeah, I just think it's such an influential, like cool movie, and it just gets better every time I see it. And I will say, Henry, if you ever get a chance to watch the original one in a theater on a repertory screening, I would strongly encourage it
Okay.
because I think the theatrical experience on that one really elevates it a lot. Like I've seen it twice in the theater, and man, does this movie play in a theater? Like absolutely.
That's fair.
So yeah,
I
it's
just I just thought
I
of
will say that.
another comparison of like why this one isn't as high up for me, even though like I appreciate all of it.
Mm,
So imagine taking the score and the twist ending out of Saw, the original. That movie is
mm,
just it's fine. You know what I mean? It does its job. It's cheap. It's entertaining, but it's not like mind blowing. But that ending and the score throughout, it's one of those things where it's like that's what I think of. This one's just missing that. Where it's like when we're comparing like for me 1, 2, and 3, I'm borderline. Which one's my favorite? You know what I mean? Because like, was it the character stuff? Is it the more money? Is it the better acting? Is it the
mm,
pacing? Whereas in this one, it's not really competitions. Like I just enjoy the remake now more, and that's
mm,
probably going to guarantee being my number one. And we'll see if
mm.
3D and 2 change. I swapped. I actually swapped 2 and 3D at the last minute. I was like, nah, fuck it, 3D was awesome. I loved it. Let's go, baby.
Oh my god.
So
Oh
with
my
that
god.
said,
All right, well, this is the last episode of Let's Rank Stuff. We had a good run. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I would do
now you
that.
know
No,
how
because
I
I know
feel
you've
when you
you
fucking
no
yeah.
no you've given me that look a couple of times with some of my goofy rankings over the years. So now I know how it feels. But
Yep.
no, it's fine. I get it. And I get why you like the remake a lot. Like again, I enjoy that remake a lot. I think it's great. Like I think that remake is the shit. And anybody who craps on that, I think is just ain't a horror fan at all. Like it really, either one of those, I think are great. So. Yeah,
It
I
really
mean,
like I'm on Letterbox right now.
the 3D thing is the only one I don't understand. Other than that, we were pretty neck and neck for most of this. Other than that,
Yep.
that's the one egregious one in this one. Like we were pretty close.
This is what's gonna blow your mind on Letterbox. Obviously, you don't know Letterbox that well, but in theory, like anything that's probably like a 3.5 out of 5 average is considered like
Hmm.
good, and like in the 4 is
Yeah.
like great. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 is a 2.9. That is wild.
Mm.
It just doesn't like,
Yeah.
and
That
those
doesn't
aren't
click with
professional
me. I
reviewers.
don't
Those
know
are like
why.
fans. But you know what I mean? You would think more
Yeah.
cult people.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. Like like just to give a little bit of perspective, the original is a 3.9. So that's literally one full star
Yeah.
average lower, and that's crazy. Like the
Yeah.
fact that it's that much of a gap is
I legit think they should be pretty fairly close together. You know what I mean?
like
Like I
even
would
Texas
put them
Chainsaw
both.
Massacre
Like yeah.
2 is a 3.3, and that's technically a cult film.
Hmm.
Inherently. So that's I don't know. That's just. But you want to hear some fun? Next Generation 1.9.
Well, and again, I think that's just more of the reputation of it. I think if as horror fans discover that movie more and go back to it and legit like rewatch it, and people who like I said, bonkers, batshit horror, like it's right up that alley.
Well,
Like if
it's
you're in
just
the mood for a crazy 85-minute nutty horror movie with over the top performances and over
that's
the
the
top
thing though. The
situations,
fact that
like I
Texas
love
Chainsaw
it.
Massacre 2 is
Hmm.
3.3 and then that one's a 1.9,
Yeah.
like they're not really that much different in terms of,
Hmm.
I mean they are in a way, but like, generally speaking, it's not that much different, like, almost a full
Not
star
really.
rating. But
Yeah.
you ready for this? Texas Chainsaw 3D 2.0.
That's about right. Sounds right.
Let's go, baby. It only has 3 out of thousands and thousands of reviews. It only has 388 5-star reviews. It is
Yeah,
not.
you're in the minority on that one, sir.
And I'm
you're
cool.
you're in the wacky area.
I'm
Yeah.
setting
But
the
then again,
trend.
remember I had what was it? I
Saw
I
6.
I love Saw 6 and Predator 2. I love way more than a lot of other movies in
Yeah,
that
exactly.
franchise. I've got the goofy. Rocky 4 is my number one. The director's cut of Rocky 4 is my number one horror. Rocky movie, and all that stuff. So I got some goofy ones. Yeah, that's
All
fun.
right. So
So
let's
break it
rank
down.
up
Break it down. Let's see
Texas
what we got.
Chainsaw
Yeah.
Massacre at number 9.
Uh,
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. I
yep.
feel like I'm just a little more positive on our number 8, Leatherface, which is kind of
Hmm.
was that determining factor. Number
Yep.
7, Leatherface, Texas
Other
Chainsaw
other
Massacre.
leather other
Yep.
leather face. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Number 6, the Texas
Beginning.
Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning.
Hmm.
Number 5, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. At number 4,
How dare
Texas
you? How
Chainsaw
dare you?
3D. Let's
How
fucking
dare you?
go, baby.
All
At number
right. Well, at least
3,
in our official, it's not above these other
this
ones.
is
At
true.
least.
Texas
At
Chainsaw
least.
Massacre
Thank
2.
God.
And once again, I bring down your favorite just because your number
Yeah.
1 is
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
like my number 4. It's just always happens
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
Almost every time,
Yeah.
your number
Yeah.
1 is like my number 4, and then number 1 is the Texas Chainsaw
Well, to be
Massacre.
fair, if it was going to lose to any of the ones in the series, I'm okay with it losing to a very, very good remake, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. You know what I
What?
mean? Like a
How would you
remake
feel if
that
I
is
would have said
actually very good.
at number
Yeah.
2, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, and at number 1,
3D. Yeah, bullshit. Bullshit.
that would have been the last episode at that point. That
Yeah,
would have been
right. That would have been. You would have seen the screen go blank. Yeah, no, it's blocked. No.
so. This was a fun one.
Yeah.
This is where we had a blast, cutting faces
Mhm.
off, wearing lipstick, dancing with our
The Saw
chainsaw.
is family, baby. The Saw is family. Yep.
Now I kind of want to do a master list of Jigsaw and Texas Chainsaw and just see how
Oh
that goes.
boy.
Oh, that would be wild.
Oh boy.
But
Where do I
yeah, so
rank? Where do I rank Saw 6 amongst the Texas Chainsaw family? Yeah, I don't know.
that would definitely be
That's a
interesting.
good one. I
So
don't know.
next
I would
week,
probably still, honestly, I'd probably still rank my top 3 above any of the Saw movies. Honestly, the
wow,
remake, TCM
that's
2
fair.
and TCM. Yeah, probably because I have more of a history with those movies than I do the Saw movies overall. So, but I love the Saw movies.
That's fair.
They're fun.
All right, so
Hmm.
next week we decided we have a rundown for our next 4 weeks. So I can go ahead and run it down. Next week we're doing
Yeah.
Shane Black, written and directed, non-lethal weapon, because we already covered Lethal Weapon, so we're just gonna kind of take that one out. That'll get repetitive. So take Lethal Weapon out of. We're gonna go Shane Black. I think it ended up being 11 movies total.
Something, yeah, it's stuff like Last Action Hero, Last Boy Scout, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, The Nice Guys,
Long Kiss
Predator,
Goodnight. Yeah.
The Predator, which we talked about, but we'll see where it ranks as far as Shane Black's Oeuvre. Yeah, Iron Man 3 is in there.
Now we're
Yeah,
specifically going Shane Black, not Alien vs Predator. You know what I mean? So I'm definitely curious
right,
how that goes.
right.
And
Hmm.
then the following week we're gonna, in honor of Top Gun Maverick coming out, we're gonna go Tom Cruise with Mission Impossible. And then the
Hmm.
following week we're gonna have a little bit of fun, bring back the comedy. We're gonna go Adam McKay. And then right after Jurassic World Dominion, we're gonna do the entire Jurassic Park franchise. So that is our next
Yeah.
4 weeks. So definitely gonna
Which
have a blast.
Henry's got a couple of blind spots to fill in for
I
that,
do.
right? I'm looking forward to seeing what you think. I'm a defender of both Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 as really entertaining, fun movies. So I hope you like them too. Because
I'm definitely
Lost World gets a
curious
bad rap, Jurassic Park 3 gets a bad rap. I like both those movies, so we'll see they rank in your thing. So
I'm definitely curious how it's going to
so
go. But yeah, so if you
yeah.
guys randomly clicked on this video because you're big Texas Chainsaw Massacre fans and you wanted to see our opinions on it and you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe, because every week, as I just did a rundown of what our future looks, we already went through a bunch of franchises, saw Rocky, filmographies like Tarantino and Nolan, and we just some mix and matchups. So we did the Friday trilogy and the Harold and Kumar trilogy. We did Mummy versus Indiana Jones. We're trying to mix it up, have some fun. In the future, we're gonna do like RoboCop versus Terminator. We're gonna have a blast with this. We're gonna have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're gonna be doing this for a long time, regardless of our wacky and wild takes. But that's what makes
well, but that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it fun.
Me having Texas Chainsaw 3D at 2 justifies the fact that I genuinely believe Pulp Fiction is the #1 Tarantino. So guess what? I'm not for the masses the entire time, and you can finally have Texas Chainsaw Massacre at 1 and Saw 6 at 1. Like, we are true to who we are. We don't formulate our opinions based on
and again, like you said, every now and then you're just like, we jokingly, oh, you're with the internet, but like we're definitely not with the internet on everything we do. Like I have made that perfectly clear with a lot of my rankings. Obviously, with one of your rankings on here, you have made that perfectly clear. So like we don't just follow like what everybody says, and well, even us both having Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation very high is like unusual as far as the internet is concerned. You know what I mean? Because IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, like we're way higher than all of them.
Our dynamic works, dude. And I feel like I after I watched it, and obviously I kind of spoiled it for myself because you owning it kind of was a hint, but like you on your Vudu, it's like, all right, I feel like he's got like a love for this. I didn't know. I honestly thought it was gonna be higher, to be honest. You know what I mean? I was actually shocked it was at 5, but with that, or 4, yeah. But anyway,
well, I had it at 4, but again, it was only because those 3 are just like all timers for me, like those top 3,
exactly.
And this one is more in that guilty pleasure, like so bad that it's good, like fun, entertaining, for me. So like I can't hold it up as a great, amazing piece of filmmaking, but like I had fun with it,
That's a good example of me of why I have my rankings. I have my rankings. 5 stars isn't about quality; it's about what's a Henry movie. So that's why I said borderline Texas Chainsaw Massacre 03, and maybe even 3D in the future could be 5 stars because I love them. So we'll see. But with that said, make sure you check out everything on the Hero Network, Austin. Everything tournament fights and tier ranker fights with Jordan, but also podcasts
about movies. It's very simple. A podcast about movies. It's just what it's called. We couldn't think of a title, so we just call it a podcast about movies because it's a podcast about movies. So we're talking something that we've already talked about in the past. He wanted to talk. He wants to start getting into some of these horror franchises too. So we're talking about the Scream movies, which is what we did a little while back. If you want to see our episode about the Scream movies, we talked about all those when the other one came out. So that would be easy. Well, it's easy for prep this week because I watched all those movies very recently for our shows. But yeah, we'll be doing something fun the week after. Henry, we're doing movies that are celebrating anniversaries, so 5-year anniversary. So we each picked a movie going backwards, 2017, 2012, 2007, so all the way back to the 50th anniversary, and so we each picked a mix of first time watches, things we want to watch, and movies we want to champion from those different years. So it'll be a really fun show. We try to do more recommendation based, like positive kind of shows. Like we don't go out shitting on movies, or whatever, just for fun. We want to be positive, or even if something we watch doesn't turn out the way we think, like we talk about that, but we don't crap all over movies. Some guys are just the worst movies of all time. Let's talk about the 10 worst, whatever. We're not out to do that, even if stuff I'm negative on.
We're not trying to talk about worst and overrated. Some people might prefer to debate that stuff, but that's not really our jam.
Right.
With that said, shout out to you and everything you're doing. Make sure you guys check that out. But so my name is Henry Confidential. That is Austin Pesal, and make sure you show up every week because this is where we show up to rank stuff. Bye, guys.